can you share any powerful examples, either success stories or cautionary tales of energy transition efforts and what they reveal about how we can build a truly just and community-centered transition?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think. So, I mean, the cautionary tales, there are any number of them. But maybe, uh, I mean, there are several projects, but there's one, for example, I forgot the name of the Rampasar. It's a kind of 750 megawatt solar project in Bangladesh. Huge solar installation covering like a few kind of square kilometers, where, it was a company that was brought in to install this, and the energy that's being generated from here is so it's in a rural area across some rural villages in Bangladesh, but most of the energy is actually being diverted to the city. You can see the same thing happening across North Africa, for example, the huge solar installations in North Africa, which a lot of the energy is being diverted towards Europe for use in Europe. And it's a lot of investment from Europeans. And um, the fallout of these type of installations is at several levels. So there's first, of course, just the land grabbing, because it is a land grab at the end of the day, all of these. Even where, and it's by and large in rural communities that, tend to have large areas of land, so-called either, available land or marginal land, which is never the case because it's always either community owned land, which doesn't have a title, so it's easily accessible. It's much more vulnerable for the state to take control of it. Or it is kind of pastoral lands. You see a lot of this in Africa where it's kind of range lands that, again, are super important from an ecosystem perspective, from a livelihood perspective, from even a carbon storage, from a lot of different perspectives. It's super important, but it's not recognized as such. So it's kind of land grab, displacement issues, the fact that for at any level, whether you look at it at a national level or a more kind of small scale at a microcosm level, if you're trying to look at what does a climate just and a world with a good energy transition, you also need to look at what does it mean to adapt and have resilience to the impacts of climate change, because we're not anymore in the stage where, it's very much a reality. It's here. We are dealing with the impacts now, and many countries um, have much bigger impacts than others. And so if it has that kind of this triple or quadruple impact. So at the same time, you're destroying actually local sustainable food systems that are actually the ones who are supplying the majority of food and livelihoods for most of the people. India is still 60% agricultural population. Across the world, I think like 70% of people are still fed by small scale, food production. And a lot of it is still, reasonably sustainable. So destroying the local ecosystem, you're kind of destroying the fabric of rural life, the fabric of agrarian life. Um, but at the same time, these same people who have been historically very marginalized through many different routes, lack of investment, lack of schools, lack of access to energy, lack of access to resources and things like that. It's now putting the burden on the same people without any benefit. So, it's had a huge impact on these villages, on the kind of pastoral villages, on the agrarian villages, and we see this happening everywhere. So that's on one side. On the other side, there are really nice examples of beautiful projects. So I'm going to talk about two. I think that so there's one that I think is also on our website, which is really nice to go and look at, which is solar installations in Palestine. So obviously, I don't need to say about the situation that we have in Palestine now, which obviously which is escalated since since over a year, since the October 7th. The genocide has really escalated, but it's always been under occupation and genocide for many years, for 70 years. So even historically, the Israeli strategy has been to not allow Palestinians to have sovereignty over their energy or over their food or over their land. So they control a lot of the energy access into Palestine. They allow only certain amount of energy. So what it means, practically speaking, is that many, many households in Palestine they don't have any lights on, nothing in the evenings. And it's very fluctuating. Kids cannot study. People can't, it's just for daily living. It's just impossible and a very difficult situation. So, we have this small project that is built like a kind of cooperative of women in Palestinian villages to install solar, to install small scale solar. And it's been incredible. This was before the current genocide, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it had a huge impact, basically, on them being able to do basic things, wash their vegetables, being able to communicate with each other, which is also super important when you're under like political occupation, to charge your phone, to do. So yeah, it's really brought, and women have been leading the women in the villages have been leading the project. And yeah, so that's a really fantastic example of how it can really bring benefits to the community and what they need. And it is continuing under very difficult circumstances under the current genocide as well, because we can see what our comrades in Palestine tell us is that a lot of the times the Israeli machine is targeting renewables installations in Palestine, because of course they have a strategy to starve the country but also reduce energy access. And so keeping really small scale, like a couple of solar panels that you can transport around that are easy, has been kind of a lifesaver for people to be able to charge their mobile phones or just do anything to communicate with their loved ones. So that's super important. On the other side, there's a really nice example in Scotland, where I am, of a community in the Isle of Egg. And they have a community-owned wind system. And it's fully owned by the community. But what they realized, so there's a lot of remote Scottish islands that actually are off the grid anyway. And so it allowed them to have good electricity access. But they also realize as a community what the generation looks like, because they own it and they sing in real time. So they only have one wind turbine, and it can only produce so much for the village in so long. So they have developed a system where they share it. They know that, say, I'm going to boil my kettle, somebody else can't, I don't know, have a really hot shower. I'm not sure what the other, but, so they can see during surge times, they constantly are able to monitor what their energy use is, and they really they feel this massive ownership over it because it's theirs and they are generating it and they are paying for it. It's really like it belongs to the village and they want it to work for everybody. So there are plenty of examples like that as well. I think of other solar projects in Africa, for example, where the village, they share it. They see that it's coming, one house has it, but then they open it up for other people to come in the evenings and to share. And yeah, so there are both sides of how renewables can be done. And I think it just shows that it is not just the technicality of renewables, right, that makes everything right. It's how it's done, it's how it's shared, it's how it's viewed, whether it's viewed as a community resource or whether it's viewed as something that's imposed from the outside as another kind of, it's just another route for dispossession. It's just another route of kind of language. So